What's up YouTube? This is P and Collector here, giving you the deck of the month for October. It's going to be Fabled. Now, with the release of Dual Terminal 3 and with Hidden Arsenals 3 coming out later in December, a lot of the attention and focus has been on the Fabled archetype right now that's coming out from that set. Now, I thought it would be kind of interesting to kind of go over my deck choice, or the choice that I would be running if I were to have the Fable deck with me. Now, right now I have all the Dual Terminal Fable cards that are necessary for the deck, so as of right now, I know we don't have the Fabled creatures, the Beast variants of the deck, but this is my take on it with just the Fiend types, and what the deck has to offer as of right now. I don't run any Dark World monsters because I believe the theme in and of itself is fine without them. Plus, there's a few timing issues where they don't get their effects, so I felt this to be the better option to go with it. Now, my choices may not all be clear, but you'll understand them more when I get into detail about them. Okay, the deck is very simple so far. It runs 3 Fabled Ravens, 3 Fabled Grimro, 3 Fabled Kushano, 3 Fabled Krias, 3 Fabled Luri, 2 Fabled Sulcus, 2 Fabled Mizoichi, 2 Stygian Street Patrol, 3 Magical Merchants, 2 Destiny Hero Malicious, 2 Level Eaters, 3 Pot of Avarice, Giant Trunade, Card Destruction, 1-for-1, Monster Reborn, 3 Dark World Dealings, Dark Hole, and Foolish Burial. Now, when I get into the deck, you may seem like, what's the whole point? Or you want to mill all of your monsters? I thought the point was to have them on the board. Well, the strong strategy behind the deck is you need to mill most of your monsters to get your power plays into the deck. For instance, Level Eater becomes a very important aspect of the deck. It's actually one of the few cards that helps with synchroing and works with the numbers in the deck that allows you to keep synchroing and not stopping. So, as an example, I'll show you, combined with what the extra deck looks like. Run 1 Armory Arm, 3 Fabled Reagan, Bryonac Dragon the Ice Barrier, Goyo, Stardust Dragon, Avenging Air Knight, because this deck can actually make it, and it helps with the pushes and big plays it have, since all the creatures you have are tuners and light monsters. It should not be a problem. Colossal Fighter, Scrap Dragon, 2 Fabled Valkyrias, 1 Mistworm, and 2 Fabled Leviathan. Now, when you see this deck as a whole, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look like it'll be easy to learn at all. Now, one of the power plays you can have is using Fabled Raven to get to a lot of the key plays and keep synchroing. You can discard any number of cards in your hand, and it increases level. Now, if you ditch 3 cards from your hand, you'll become a level 5, and say you have no cards in your hand, you feed off one of his levels, and now he becomes a 4-star, and Level Eater now gets summoned to the field, which allows you instantly to synchro into Fabled Reagan. Now, when Fabled Reagan is synchro summoned, you get to draw 2 cards. Now, if any of those 2 cards happen to be like a Fabled Mizoichi, you can Level Eat again, since your Level Eater will be in your graveyard. Level Eat off of Fabled Reagan, putting him to a 4-star, and then bring out the Level Eater, and using Mizoichi, sending it to the graveyard, turning him also back into a tuner, and allows you to synchro summon again into Fabled Reagan. Now, at first it seems kind of complicated, because you're like, what's the point of keep sending monsters? Because before your commitment goes to this deck, it allows you to constantly drop monsters from your hand to constantly allow you to synchro summon. Especially since you can make ridiculous levels anywhere from 5 and up. And that's very consistently, it can actually do that. Now, Magical Merchant is an interesting choice for the deck because of the 3 Pot of Avarice. The deck is heavily reliant on having monsters in your graveyard to start flowing through the cycles, because monsters like Krias become so powerful once you have monsters loaded up in your graveyard for Fabled, so 4 stars or less. It becomes increasingly powerful in how many monsters you can drop to the board. Now, what a lot of people don't know, though, is that Fabled Krias, yes, cannot bring back herself, but if you send 2 copies at the same time, or have another copy of herself in the graveyard already, you can send that, especially some of the other copy of herself. So this allows you to get level 2 plays that you couldn't have before, and most people think that you miss her effect, but you don't, and that's actually really helpful. Now, what makes the deck shine a lot more is using Fabled Kushano, because Kushano allows you to push for power plays with using Krias, using Luri, and helping you to swarm the field more with more Fabled monsters, allowing you to commit more synchro summons. Now, the reason my personal choice is having Stygian Street Patrol in the deck is because it allows for the deck to constantly drop its monsters to keep synchroing. And at times, yes, you do only have 1 normal summon, but the Stygian Street Patrol allows you to keep constantly dropping monsters, especially if you don't draw into Kriases. And Sulcus helps to mediate your hand. If you have a bunch of monsters in your hand that you need in your graveyard, it helps load up. Plus, he's a 6-star, he's a Fabled monster, and he combines really well with any of the other accessory cards, like Dark World Dealings, and especially with Kushano to help cycle himself through and special summon him back to the field. Now, especially the biggest card that I've seen that I've given more attention to this deck is Fabled Leviathan. This card, it becomes so amazing. Once you ditch enough monsters from your deck, like Grimrose and Creuses, and you haven't drawn into the Avarices, but you have drawn into things like Dark Hole, or synchro summoned into things like even Scrap Dragon. By destroying herself, either by your effect or your opponent's, you can add any 3 Fabled monsters from your graveyard to your hand, and that instantly allows you to keep constantly circulating your deck. So say you add 3 Creuses to your hand, but you have a Fabled Kushano in graveyard. You add the 3 Creuses, then you discard a Creus for Kushano to add it to your hand. Then the Creus' ability triggers. You special summon any Fabled monster. Then you get to special summon Raven to the field. Raven's effect will trigger. You then send 2 or 3 Fabled monsters. All the Creuses will activate, and then you increase his level to 5. The Creuses then will special summon any 2 Fabled monsters you wish, helping you to synchro summon more. Then, after you've used the Raven to make him a 5-star, since you ditched 3 cards, you level eat off of Raven, then allowing you to synchro summon again into Fabled Reagan. So the deck allows you to constantly abuse Reagan to draw 2 cards. It's one of the main focuses of the deck to constantly keep circulating and circulating until you get to every card that you need. And then from there, you just benefit from all the other synchro monsters, like using Fabled Valkyries, Mistworm, and even the Leviathans. Now, most people are wondering, too, is why don't I have Honest in here? I had Honest in here originally, but it contradicted with a lot of the cards in the deck, and it didn't let me to constantly keep going through the deck and synchro summoning. So I decided to forfeit them, and in the end, you don't really need them as much. They are nice to have, but the synchro should be able to take care of most of the problems you run into. Now, I know this deck's biggest weakness right now is backfield. And you know what? I mean, right now, as how I see the deck, as of right now, it's meant to be a fun version of it. It's very hard to make this deck into a very strong competitive build without it getting harassed too much by spell and traps. But for the most part, you know, this is how I feel the deck should be at its strongest point right now. And not to mention, too, with the limited card pool that it does have to use, it's actually not bad. It's actually very fun to play, but the deck is very, very confusing. At first glance, of course, because you're not familiar with the level adjustments, the constant special summoning for the turn, and just what the deck can actually be capable of when you choose to go from 6 cards to 0 and constantly keep drawing 2 cards every time you synchro summon. And that's what the deck is really just trying to show, is how the numbers, how the creatures work together, and more or less that the Hidden Arsenals 3 and Dual Terminal cards all play a big role in what this deck will do for the future. Now, if you guys have any comments, questions, please, guys, please subscribe. I'm trying to get up there, guys, to get as many people as I can. If you guys have any questions about the deck, be free to PM me. This deck is for sale, so if there's any particular cards you guys need from it, just free to PM me. You guys know the details. So if there's anything else you guys have, make sure you guys put it in the comments below. And this is PN Collector here, logging out for my deck of the month for Fabled.